It was a cold, gray evening on the busy streets of the city. People hurried past, umbrellas clutched tightly in their hands, cars honking impatiently at one another. But in the middle of the chaos, on a street corner, stood a little girl no more than 8 years old. Her face was pale, her breathing shallow, and her tiny hands clutched her chest as though she were fighting to stay on her feet. She whispered faintly, "Help, please." But no one stopped. People looked at her and kept walking. Some glanced away, pretending not to notice. Others muttered, "Poor thing," before moving on, too busy to care. Minutes passed. Her knees buckled, and she sank to the ground, trembling, her lips turning blue. The world around her blurred as if she were disappearing in plain sight. The crowd kept flowing like a river around a rock, yet nobody reached out. It was as if compassion had been lost in the rush of life. Then, from the distance, came a man who looked nothing like a hero. His clothes were worn and patched, his shoes broken at the seams, and a torn backpack hung on his shoulder. He was a poor laborer who had just finished a long day of work. His name was Adil. He had nothing in his pockets but a few coins, barely enough to buy bread for himself. Yet when his eyes caught sight of the fragile child lying weakly on the sidewalk, he froze. Something deep inside his heart refused to let him walk away. He rushed to her side and knelt down. "Little one, can you hear me?" he asked, his voice trembling. The girl barely nodded, her words cracked. "I can't breathe." Panic surged through him, but he quickly lifted her into his arms. "Don't worry, I've got you," he whispered, even though he had no idea how he would help her. Cars zoomed past as he stood in the rain, waving desperately for someone to stop. "Please, a child is sick!" "Help us!" he shouted, but windows stayed shut and drivers looked away. People hurried by, ignoring his pleas. Some even muttered, "He's probably using her to beg for money," and walked off without a second glance. Each rejection was like a knife in his heart, but Adil refused to give up. With the girl burning up in his arms, he started running. His legs heavy, his body aching, but his determination unshaken. He didn't know where the nearest hospital was, but he kept running through the streets, asking for directions. Many ignored him, a few pointed him vaguely. The child whimpered, her small hand clutching his shirt. "Stay with me," he begged, his voice cracking. "Just stay with me a little longer." Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he reached a small clinic. Bursting through the doors, he pleaded with the nurse. "Please! She's very sick. Help her." But the nurse looked at his tattered clothes, then at the girl and sighed. "Does she have a guardian? Do you have money for the treatment?" Adil's heart sank. He had only a handful of coins. "Please, I have nothing, but she's just a child. Save her life, I beg you." His voice broke as he placed the little girl gently on the hospital bench. For a moment, there was silence. Then a doctor who overheard the plea stepped forward. "Forget the money," he said firmly. "This child needs help now." The girl was rushed into the emergency room. Adil sat outside, drenched in rain and sweat, whispering prayers he didn't even realize he still remembered. Hours felt like days until finally the doctor emerged. "She'll be okay," he said gently. Relief flooded through Adil, and tears rolled down his cheeks. He had carried the weight of fear, but now he could finally breathe. When the little girl woke up, her weak eyes searched the room until they found him sitting in the corner. She smiled faintly and whispered, "Thank you for not leaving me." Adil's throat tightened, and he nodded. No one deserves to be left alone when they're hurting. Soon after, the girl's parents arrived, frantic and ashamed. They explained she had gotten separated in the crowd. Seeing their child alive, they broke into tears and hugged her tightly. When they learned what Adil had done, they couldn't stop thanking him. But he only shook his head. "I just did what any human should do," he said softly. "I couldn't walk away. They wanted to repay him, but he refused money. All he asked was, promise me you'll love her, protect her, and never let her stand alone when she needs you most." The parents, moved to their core, gave their word. As Adil walked out into the night, back into his life of struggle, he carried nothing in his pockets, but his heart was full. That day, the poor man who had nothing became richer than all those who had walked by, for he carried the greatest treasure of all, compassion. The little girl never forgot him. Years later, when she grew up, she would often tell the story of the stranger who saved her life. She would say, "No one stopped for me that day, but one poor man became my hero. And because of him, I learned that kindness can come from the most unexpected hearts." And the message remained clear: sometimes the world doesn't need wealth, power, or fame. It just needs someone brave enough to care.